you're releasing nuclear waste into ocean. Sushi is dangerous. Oxygen levels are dropping. Death rate is rising. Rare disease is more common. Your government tells Joe it's okay to kill the planet. We are running out of time.
Welcome back. One of the tragic parts of the Fukushima catastrophe, the greatest disaster in recorded human history, although you'd never know it if you watch the mainstream media, because they don't talk about Fukushima anymore. They don't talk about radiation. They talk about some whale die-offs, but they don't talk about the fact that the Pacific Ocean is now terribly irradiated, and you should not eat anything from the Pacific Ocean. And if you live along the coast, chances are, not all, but most of the tide pools you'll find have very little life in them, if any. It's been that way for years now. We're 6.5 years after Fukushima or thereabouts, and things are not good. 4 days ago, in an area near the abandoned Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine, another fire broke out, a forest fire. Now, these are bad for several reasons, the most obvious of which is that the trees have either been covered with radioactive debris from the disaster, as have the forests around Fukushima, or the trees themselves and other vegetation have pulled the radiation up from the groundwater into their actual pine needles, leaves, whatever they happen to be sporting. It was found in California, for example, up and down the Sierra Nevada and into Oregon and Washington, that many samples of pine trees showed radiation in the pine needles. This was a year or two after Fukushima. So they were uptaking it from the ground, right, along with the water, up the cambium and into the leaves or the pine needles. So the fire at Fukushima that we talked about some years ago, I don't remember how big it was. This one at Chernobyl is about 40 acres. That's what it was originally. I don't see any stories subsequent to the one of 4 days ago, so I think they probably knocked it down. But these forest fires are just another tentacle of the radioactive beast that we have to deal with. Because at any time, these things can burn, and up in the air goes what? Radiation. And where it comes down, nobody knows. But anywhere it wants to, I guess, is the answer. Back with us tonight to talk about some of this is a great man, a person who has spent so much of his life's energy investigating and trying to inform us about Fukushima, the Pacific, certainly the British Columbia coast, Dana Durnford. Hello, Dana. Welcome back.
Hi, Jeff. Hello, folks.
How are you?
Good, Jeff. Thank you. It's pretty hot here lately, so
yeah,
it's kind of rough.
Yeah, it's been hot here too, like 90s.
Yeah, and I'm from Canada, so when it gets over 50, it's hot for us. Yeah, or it's like brutal at 60, and at 70, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing here in Canada. I got to go to Alaska.
Well, isn't it true that you're having a 5-day holiday up there now?
See, it's very true, and it's a 150-year anniversary, and it's free now to go to any parks across Canada this year for the 150th anniversary. Yeah. But it's free to go to any park, and blah, blah, blah. So the Canadian government is encouraging.
Well, they usually charge quite a bit to get into the parks, is that it?
Well, it could be. If you were traveling across Canada, you know how people travel across their country and uses the parks with motorhomes and that. It gets... I think it's meant to encourage people to go out there because there's no animals out there, or very little mammals to be found anywhere, or birds. So when you get lots of people out there, it looks like stuff is happening.
Yeah.
But I'm out to the parks, the local provincial parks we have here every single day. We got a new camera, and so I got to get all the kinks out of that. It's like sickening, big production camera. And so, it's there's a lot going on. There's a lot of formats, etc., and you gotta. It's a lot of work to it. Fit into Sundance and film festivals worldwide, there's this minimum criteria, and so we surpassed it. We got better than that. And you got to learn to use it properly next, right? You got to go.
It doesn't come with a little man that operates it for you?
No. And, like, it's sickening, as you know, how the equipment, it's disgusting how much equipment. And if you make a mistake, I mean, it could take months to get back on track. But Chernobyl, so what a lot of people are not able to wrap their mind around is that, like a forest fire, like you were talking earlier, the pine needles, for instance, in Japan were stupid amount of radiation, say 28,000 becquerels a kilogram. They were using it for tea. This is murdercide. It doesn't.
They make tea out of pine needles in Japan.
Yeah, and the tips. Yeah. And the tips were showing 2,800 becquerels a kilogram.
Wow.
And so these are scary numbers. Now, the firefighters that are working on these fires in Chernobyl or anywhere else that's contaminated is definitely, they just really hurt themselves. It might take a couple of months or years before it starts to show up, but it's going to show up. No ifs, no buts, no maybes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you think about, it doesn't sound like a lot when you say 40 acres, right? It really doesn't, right? 40 acres is not a lot to a lot of people. It doesn't mean very much to people. What did Chernobyl do? Well, you still can't eat the meat or drink the milk in certain parts, or sell the land in parts of Ireland, Scotland, and UK because of Chernobyl 30 years ago. And Switzerland just opened its freshwater lakes for fishing last year after 28 years or so, 28 and a half years of being
Really?
closed.
I didn't know that. So, see, okay. Switzerland, heavily contaminated from Chernobyl.
Right. If anybody's ever talked about Bilderbergers are put into an algorithm each year before it happens, so we can be censored for a couple of weeks until they get back. And so Chernobyl, when this is producing, the radiation wasn't like in Fukushima where a lot of it was right smack into the ocean. The ocean was right there. In Chernobyl, the big stuff fell into the forest around it.
Oh, so you'd have a real big, thick forest bed to burn. Okay.
Yeah, real nice one. Yeah, perfectly. And it doesn't. So bacteria, mold, and funguses will hold the moisture in the wood, and then the wood will be rotten. And everybody knows what that's like when you tread on rotten wood; it falls apart. But in Chernobyl, that's not so. It doesn't work that way. But so there's much more. And now we know bacteria typically can bioaccumulate the radiation. On top of that, not just the pine needles, but say full lichen and fungi and mold and stuff like this will really, like, 1 million becquerels a kilogram. And so this stuff is released back into the environment. Geiger counter's been on steady for the last week or so. And I thought the numbers were pretty high the last couple of days, up hitting around 300 out into the parks. And the top layer was getting high numbers the last number of days.
Counts per minute? 300?
Counts per minute. Everything's count per minute.
That's pretty damn high.
Yeah. And counts per 55 is an evacuation zone. So microsievers, unisievers, millisievers, people don't want to use that on their Geiger counters. That's actually how they train us all to manipulate ourselves by doing it that way. The only way to do it is the counts per minute. Counts per minute is the radioactive atoms. And so everybody's got to switch their Geiger counters to counts per minute from here on out. And that's a real, because 55 counts per minute is evacuation zone. And so millisievers, unisievers, microsievers is an effect like, you can't read the sunshine on your Geiger counter, you won't read it, but it's that kind of effect where we want to see atoms that we're ingesting or breathing in. And so Chernobyl, and so people really should watch a documentary about Chernobyl one of these days called Chernobyl Hearts. It was about the children in the orphanages of Belarus and Ukraine and from Chernobyl. And these children are unbelievably deformed and abandoned, and they don't have anybody to love them.
How sad.
They are abused.
And they're shut out of the news, too, by the way. We don't hear about them.
Yeah. Because, like, say, the people that are taking care of the children got 50 children. And the children are very disruptive. They're way past autism type child. They're totally, their whole life is rejected. And so they become very unruly. So they're very abused, and there is no system there to deal with that. That's all done It's volunteers raising the money to keep these children alive. And so they don't talk about that in the industry, how this works. There's a story about 6 months ago, they found uranium was for sale, and they couldn't figure out where it came from. Now they say it came from depleted uranium. It was depleted uranium came from the production of fuel left over after you extracted the uranium they wanted, the 235, or after creating plutonium-239. What's left over is called depleted uranium, but you have to have a special license. I thought that was interesting in the story was you had to have a special license to handle that stuff, a special permit to even have it. And so they're always saying how depleted uranium is not harmful, but yet there's the evidence again that it most certainly is, because you have to have a special license, you have to have a special facility equipment, and if you get caught with it, then you get arrested, and it's a big deal. But yet they claim in the media, and so there's all these disparaging where they say it's not bad, but yet, because they use it, like, as you know, in Fallujah. And in Fallujah, like, once again...
they covered the whole damn country of Iraq. 84%
of the women were getting deformed babies, so they just stopped having babies.
Yeah.
And, like, deformed beyond anything.
Beyond belief. Horrors. Yeah, I've seen.
To get 10,000 Taliban. Right? Yeah. 10,000 Taliban. We wrecked country after country, including Libya and Syria.
Well, we end up paying for...
to get 10,000 Taliban.
We're supporting a lot of the Taliban, too. And ISIS.
29,000 rapes a year in the military, get 10,000 Taliban. You got 22 veterans committing suicide every day, get 10,000 Taliban. We'll wreck the planet. They're doing the same thing now for ISIS, right? And whoever comes next, right? But that's now, and at the same time, Jeff, Paladin, when we've seen how Westinghouse just went into bankruptcy receivership, we've seen how Areva, the biggest nuclear companies, folks, this is what we're talking about right there, went into receivership, ship and bankruptcy protection. And then TEPCO, of course, has changed hands now, is owned by the government. So we see these big monolithic Toshiba just closed its doors on nuclear. They can make them, but they can't fix the nuclear power plant, right? So it's one of those where, like, if you buy a car, should the company be able to fix your car? Yeah. Or they shouldn't be able to make the car. Is that a good thought? That makes sense to me. If the company can't fix something, they shouldn't be allowed to make it, is the way I see it, particularly if it's going to wreck a country. I'm just like, I know it's a big reach. But say Australia, for instance, Jeff. Now, Australia, you can't have a reactor there, but you got 31% of the uranium on the planet and you ship it worldwide. But you can, by legislation, you're not allowed to have a reactor because it's too dangerous. But yet, right, Australia has Paladin. Now, Paladin just went under. It's looking for $360 million to stay afloat for another little bit. But uranium prices bottomed out about 6 years ago when Fukushima happened and haven't come back up. They're like $18, went down from $76, $78 a kilogram to $18 now, which is rock bottom. That's rock bottom. You're going lower than that and you're going to lose money constantly. Just for operation, you're going to have to make that much. And so it shows the death of it. What they done was liquidated the stocks over the last 6 years and got people to buy the stocks they had, and now everybody's stuck with the debt. And they kept the industry afloat, and that's what they're still trying to do is flog that dead horse a little bit more. And so now Paladin's gone. So like I say, Toshiba's gone, Areva's gone, which is France, And so they also, this is the thing about it. Now Chernobyl, that plume is going to be much bigger than the original plume from Chernobyl. It's not going to be as radioactive, but it doesn't need to be. It's going to be bigger because it's 40 acres versus, say, a quarter acre. Those buildings, by the way, were big buildings. These are big buildings. But Fukushima was 100 times bigger, those buildings. The fuel, because they had the fuel on the roof, where that one in Chernobyl was a relatively new reactor, just had the single load into it, and they didn't store the fuel on site. But still, the mixture they were doing, it was a weaponized facility, it turns out, and they were making weaponized plutonium-239 there. So it was a plutonium-239 machine is what they were creating, and that was for bombs. And then when you look at the inventory of how many bombs Russia had made, something 40,000 or whatever it was extraordinary numbers. then that once again kind of adds, some weight to the validity of it. But and so there would have been a lot of curium isotopes, and curium acts just like plutonium isotopes. And plutonium isotopes killed all the animals in all the studies within about 5 years, particularly in dog studies. And I like to use Raymond Gilmetti's studies from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico. The 144 dogs. Now, he had 94 studies, and the one I like to flag out there all the time was the dog study, and I show that in my presentations all the time, where all the dogs died. 94 of the 144 dogs died within about 3.5 years of bone tumors. But it was bone, liver, and kidney tumors competing that killed the dogs, but most of the dogs did die ultimately from the bone tumor. And so that really definitively, you didn't, and this was just a single monodispersal inhalation for the animals. And whereas the firefighters, now there was another, I can marry this up to another, to really bring it home for people. The suits that they wear on the nuclear power site, say in Japan, people have seen pictures of the workers. These are the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. It's not Harvard or Yale or Berkeley or Stanford or Oxford or MIT. These are the victims of society, because once you have a detonation there, they won't go in there, and the homeless don't know better. And so the suit doesn't protect them. There was 5,000 workers who had internal exposure. Now, they had masks on. They had gloves on with taped on. They had these paper suits on. Dana, they had, the boots were taped up. So how did they get internal radiation, Dana? Well, it's so small, it's so tiny. You're talking about 2 million atoms.
Don't worry about it, Dana.
There's
it's
no
nothing.
filter.
It's just tiny.
It goes
away.
Exactly.
It just goes away. It doesn't. Don't worry about it.
That's right. Turns Superiorus. But there's no filter small enough actually to filter it. Otherwise, they would just use those suits to filter radiation all the time and clean up everything. Is another way to look at it, and the filters on their masks. But also, the workers at these sites, they're getting hit with gamma shine and X-rays and neutrons. And so you don't need to have the internal exposure. You're getting internal exposure anyway. Yeah. And there's no way to avoid it. And it takes several years, which is a small exposure, to really knock you down. But if you got up close to the fuel rods, it's like a sniper round. And so when those buildings detonated, that's why Harvard was not going to go in and around that site, because there's fuel rod pellets. The rods are full of pellets, and I can't remember what the numbers are, but it's an insane amount. To say 5 million pounds per building, that's over the top. Kind of like, Jeff, 1 pound will drop you. If I got 1 pound and you're walking past my door, it'll kill you in a couple of weeks because you walk past my door.
Wow.
Now imagine being, walking right by it, because it exploded and went all over the place. Yeah. And so this is why only the homeless were used. Now the firefighters if you look at Chernobyl, all the 600 helicopter pilots, they all died of severe radiation illnesses.
Wow.
Yeah. 600 helicopter pilots. That was Harvard after Fukushima. One of the presentations was talking about it. Little pains of conscience. You get these little tidbits coming out of these people. And so the forest fire, that plume, just because it traveled around the planet 3 times or 700 times or 1,000 times, and then people sucked in those atoms, then 10, 20 years down the road, they would have got a cancer under normal circumstances. Right now, so when you breathe in this stuff, your body has to attack it. So if you got a flu, your body attacks it with white blood cells for, say, a week and beats it down. Then your red blood cell count comes back up, and your white blood cells, which is your body's defense, is made in your spleen mostly, but also all your joints. But when radiation is in your body, it's like the flu never goes away, and the white blood cell counts, which displaces oxygen in the nutrition-carrying red blood cells, it displaces that permanently over, and so decades now you got lower oxygen in your body.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. And so, like we talked about this before, and you actually have supplements that are meant to help rejuvenate or help to chelate it out of your body. I can't remember the name of the.
Well, it's a bio superfood.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's the 4 most potent algae on the planet, and it was actually developed by Dr. Michael Kiriak after Chernobyl, to help the Chernobyl area residents survive. And he is credited with saving a couple 100,000 lives. This does chelate and it does build the immune system. It's an extraordinary product. It's the only thing I know of on the planet that can actually help chelate radiation and radioactive nuclides out of the body, along with heavy metals.
And you got to hit it every way. That's one way. And then another way is, and so like water filtration, not going to get it all out of people's water. So they're like, well, why bother? I said, well, you get some out. And what about the air filter? That you think of it that way, get some out. See, that's how you approach an event like this. I mean, you got to do the best you can. And so if you're, no matter how you look at it, you got to take advantage of the things that we live in a technological world, unfortunately. And unfortunately, because of nuclear, once again, folks, like there are ways to try to chelate it out of your body, and it's worth it. Why wouldn't you try it? Because the big doses that came in originally, they're still here. They're still everywhere. They're never going to go away.
Right.
So we should have, put all the animals out to pasture when this accident happened, got rid of the milk, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so how, we're going to break, but how could you, nuclear, to me, that's like an asteroid coming at your planet. If you told the planet, we got to stop drinking milk because of a nuclear accident.
Exactly. Hold on a minute, Dana. We'll come right back. I want to find out what's going on this summer, as far as you can tell. A few more dragonflies this year than last year. There were none for a couple of years, virtually none. I don't know if they're bouncing back a little bit. They might be. But in general, I don't know where the geese went. They're gone. A few ducks. It's just bizarre. So hang on. Be right back. What's going on this summer? Are we still getting the comments about the silent forests? What are we getting? What do we hear?
Right, and like I said, I got some provincial parks here, so I asked everybody that I see, one of these parks in particular has a 13-kilometer trail around the lake, and it's really nice and flat, and it was built for wheelchairs, actually. But it's a beautiful park. We're in British Columbia, tropical rainforest, so to speak. And so I asked everybody about insects and birds, animals, everything else, and generally three birds. No mammals whatsoever, and scattered maybe a mosquito or something like that they'll mention. Yesterday they were talking about bullfrogs up in one corner, just one little spot, and also common garter snakes. Quite a few apparently was out sunning themselves on the paths in there. That was good. Now, I went around the lake 5 times. I got a little scooter. Right. Electric scooter, and I take the equipment, go in there, and I've found 2 extra woodpeckers nobody talks about on the trails, and it's easy to see them, so I'm surprised nobody mentioned it. But I'm probably talking to about 40 people. Now, it seems like all the shrimpers are selling all their licenses out here. The bottoms fell out of it. Everybody's trying to shake their licenses. It looks like all the fishers have collapsed, by the sounds of what I'm hearing. And the coastline is 100% silent. The shorelines are naked. I'm considering heading up to the Charlottes, the Haida which is up by Alaska, about 50 miles from Alaska, in a couple of weeks' time. I still haven't made my mind up. It's an enormous amount of money. I'll probably get arrested a few more times, blah, blah, blah. And it's just so much money, Jeff.
I know.
I just like the thought of sickening, but I can't let money concern me, and I really can't, and it's hard to do that. Right. It cost a fortune to do the coastline last time, but what we're seeing now, where people are recognizing something is really terribly wrong here, and Fukushima seems to be on everybody's mind. It's I see it as like a sadness all of a sudden overcome this coastline. I've had some really strange encounters with people where they're really upset that everything is so, quiet on the ocean. A lot of people, of course, they just blame it on global warming. I tell people about Fukushima And the reason I'm saying it that way is because I mentioned Fukushima. You can imagine what I'm like. I don't hide away from anybody. I'm in everybody's face. I got the answers. I can argue if I need to. And so the new camera is this great big thing, and I'm going to go down and poke it in fisheries and oceans and in everybody else's faces. And the reaction I see now out of people when I bring it out is everybody's asking me which TV station am I from and when are they going to be on the TV. And that was kind of the reaction I was hoping for. So it's imposing, And I carry myself well. And so I'm hoping to get people to speak publicly on it and go down and talk to the fishermen and see if I can get them. It's you got to be, if you're doing these kind of things, you don't want to set the stage, for instance, because everybody says, "Oh, Dana, you set it all up." But if you show up as media and you ask them how is the industry looking and stuff like this, just a normal questions, and they don't know who you are, then that's legit. And so I'm planning on doing that kind of routine. And, I think that if I don't do, I can go over to the west coast of Vancouver Island where all the whales are emaciated again.
Is that making the local papers? Are we getting stories about emaciated whales?
They kind of report on it, and...
Are they kind of blackballing it now?
They're blackballing it, but it's still showing up, yeah. No, you're definitely getting... So if you look at this forest fire in Chernobyl, the Independents made an interesting statement in their story where they said they're worried about the forest fire because it'll increase cancer locally. But it's an abandoned zone, buddy. But it was the fact that they married that context in there was really interesting to me. Oh, wait a second. So now it's not like a banana. Now it gives you cancer after 74 years, right? That's kind of the emittance you're looking at, right? So Chernobyl was equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs, according to those folks. And it stopped after 10 days, according to the experts who are outrageous lawyers anyway. But there you go. That was the official narrative. Japan allowed 20 times more cesium in the drinking water than Chernobyl did. And so it shows you this incredible disparage of reality. For instance, we're telling you like a banana, but now all of a sudden with the forest fire, they're worried about an increase of cancer locally. But locally, there's nothing there because it's an evacuation zone. So it's like
that's a little bit of a problem. Yes,
And here in Canada, and we're on the Pacific Ocean, we're very privileged. We don't have a huge pollution problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have, the coastline is well known, has been studied by major institutions worldwide for many decades, species, and repeated over and over and over. And so I don't hear anybody talking about that at all. And I have done everything imaginable, everything. I got 6 gold medals now for activism. 6 gag orders for activism.
Same thing, Dana.
Same thing. Yeah. Just Dana being funny. And it's that when you tell people that, it really means something to people, Jeff, I do that all the time with people when I talk about Fukushima. So, by the way, I can only tell you so much because I have 6 gag orders from the Canadian courts, and they kind of look at you and say, do you know what a gag order is? And they're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden they say, well, I guess I should, they say these things like, I guess I should be proud of you, and this is a Canadian thing, right? I'm proud of you, right? Kind of, that you took that blow for us. They're they're kind of getting it. But I do see the young crowd is really woken up to Fukushima, very in tune with it. They're very upset with it. And, the young generation become very articulating. They're very whirly now, and they're able to. And the young people will use the fact checker, and they won't go with Snopes, or they won't go with Google's versions. They're all over the place looking for the consensus. That gives me hope. But seeing the fishermen now all coming to this realization, that's a sad thing for me. And seeing all the people they poisoned because they wouldn't give it up, they wouldn't stop catching it and sending it out to everybody. That leaves me haunted. That, how are they going to feel when they look back over the last couple of years and realize what they've done and where all that food ended up going?
I don't know how much accountability we're ever going to see.
Just imagine. Yeah. Imagine you're a fisherman. You know this has happened. You know all the food is radiated. And you go out, I said to a friend of mine, now he had a farm. He gave up the farm. Now he had the farm for 20-odd years, a successful farm. He sold a house that was there for $300,000 or something like that, but it's just out in the middle of nowhere. But he walked away from the farm. The farm is still inactive. He's not trying to sell it to somebody. Because I had said, like, if I had a farm, how can I sell it to somebody and have them do it? And how can I go out and now get product and sell it, knowing the implications and the misery that you're going to cause by doing that to people? And like, some of the divers, one of the divers in particular had said to me, well, at least we're sending it back to Japan. And I said, no. Yeah. I said, no, that don't work that way, man.
Doesn't happen.
It's still horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people might not have been pro-nuke that are going to eat it. They might have been the anti-nuke. So, it was like he came to that realization too. And that was a hard thing. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember that out there in Radioland there, when I was out on these trips, I was hanging out with the dive fleet, doing surveys alongside all the divers. And so the irony of that one didn't escape me or anybody else, I'm sure. And it was uncomfortable.
Well, that's because that was your career. I remember when you were doing that. Sure.
And I was entitled. I was entitled. I had earned my right to hang out with that fleet. And I wanted that fleet to hang out with because that was my cronies, but also because it was fuel and water. And it was just, this was tough time of the year, and so that was people that could rescue me too, or vice versa. But that's an important thing, especially when you're traveling the whole coastline of Canada by yourself, and everybody's trying to kill you online. They're online trying to murder you and they are murdering you all day, character assassinating you while you're out there on the ocean. I mean, that was relentless. That
had to be. Effective. I mean, see, that's a major motion picture when you think about it. It would be a fabulous motion picture, but they'll never make it.
Screaming, he's out there taking pictures.
Yeah.
The demon. I can't believe it. He's out there taking pictures. It's horrible. I can't. They didn't stop taking pictures. I mean, but they turned it. They didn't go that route. They turned it into a circus. But that's all it was they're taking pictures. So, like, the crime of the century was Dana Durnford. I got 6 gag orders based up on the fact I went out and took pictures of the coastline and said, hey, there's something else going on here. So if you look at it in that terms, I'm not such a bad guy, and it looks kind of comical, and it looks kind of like, but it's just, I had this personality, unfortunately. It's a very engaging, very lit personality. It's fire, and that's just the way that is. That's what drove me on my life, so to speak. And the reality of it was that's what you needed to get the job done. That's what you needed to put up with the barrage of assaults and character assassinations.
Yeah.
And you know the routine yourself, Chip.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's 14 reactors in Japan that didn't go into cold shutdown, had station blackouts, just by the way, for anybody who's wondering. Now, Chernobyl was 1/3 the size of any of the reactors in Fukushima. Chernobyl was a 30% meltdown compared to Fukushima. It was 100%. They went off like firecrackers and totally lost all their inventory, including many reactor cores at the top of the building. But as far as we know, they weren't, they were just normal fuel cycles. And so, except for number 3 was mixed oxide fuel at Japan. And so allegedly, and this was for weaponized isotopes. I don't know if it was for bombs or for directed energy weapons, but now the mixed oxide, which is the mixed oxide fuel where they took the reclaimed uranium, reclaimed plutonium fission products from nuclear missiles and burned them again. And you can't burn this stuff. They're doing that allegedly because they haven't got a repository, and these are hot, what they call hot particles, like the americium, neptunium, the plutonium, uranium-235, plutonium-239, very hot particles. And they claim that by reburning them, they're reducing, but all you can't burn this stuff. You just, ultimately, if you burn it in that context, you released it into the environment.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you aggregate it and put it in one spot. Now, this it burns 200,000 times hotter when it goes off. The normal reactor would go off. So that's why it was such a massive detonation. And that's because of the gases it produces. So Chernobyl, because it wasn't by the ocean, the fallout landed, a lot of the heavy stuff would have landed in those forests. Those forest fires are really important. And when they liberate it, and now a forest fire, Jeff, will burn, say, 2,500, 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures.
Sure.
That's enough to toss it far up, high up into the lower troposphere.
Way up.
Yeah. And it can easily now, within 40 days, find its way right back, right around the planet.
Yeah, let me ask, before we have 5 minutes left, let me ask another question. We have heard virtually nothing about the Fukushima Daiichi destroyed nuclear power plant. Nothing about the constant 25-hour-a-day leakage into the ocean of thousands of tons of deadly contaminated water for 6.5 years now. We don't hear anything about it. Nothing. So it must have gone away, right? And they must have fixed it, right?
No. And it's never going to go away. It'll be there in 1,000 years, long after we're all gone. That'll still be going strong. And so even if the chain reaction stopped on its own, you can't do anything with it. You can't contain it because it will detonate. And so you have to vent it. And all the casks are vented anyway under normal circumstances. And so Fukushima, they're trying to do the 2020 Olympics. And we can see they just created a whole bunch of laws now where they're going to basically use it to stymie dissent about Fukushima at all worldwide is what they're attempting to do, censor people worldwide under the guise of the Olympics. All of a sudden, the Olympics become like this.
They're going to be terrific
event.
Yeah.
We can censor the whole planet because there's a sporting event.
That's right.
We got to lock down the whole planet because there's a sporting event. We gotta take away everybody's civil liberties and invade everybody's private places because one of you might be thinking about attacking the Olympics. What are you talking about? Like, really? And people fall for that. And people worldwide, and governments worldwide now will go after their own people during the Olympics to make sure nobody's putting out pictures with the Olympics on it or making threats or that they're not terrorists. I mean, this is psychosis. This is MK Ultra worldwide is what we're looking at. And then the whole apparatus have went from, we don't have an enemy out there with a military, unless you want to call Russia that. And why would you call Russia has always been the bad guy. And so back to your question.
We got to have a villain. Oh, of course. It's too bad the villain isn't Fukushima. That would be rational and logical.
Can you imagine?
Why isn't the world working on this? Why isn't the world calling the best scientists I called for this within weeks of this thing. I said, we need an international conference immediately of the top nuclear scientists, physicists, technicians in the world to address this issue. Never happened. Nobody ever. And
I know the reason why, because if you'd done that and you put all these people together, someone like me would show up and say, look, he talks about bananas last year, and the year before this guy was talking about potato chips, and these are all lawyers. Yeah. And so when you put all the lawyers together, and it's a noble thing what you're talking about, and I agree wholeheartedly, but we need, unfortunately, these people, if they come out and actually try to fix the problem, they got to admit there's a problem, and then everything else they've ever said becomes in question. And then we spend all of our time calling for prosecution of their previous crimes. So we're like, they got themselves dug into they got a moat around themselves. They can't come out because we'll shoot them on the way out. And if they try to hang around the outside, they'll fall down to the moat and drown. And they've really done it to themselves. There's no way out. No one's going to tell the truth. Under any circumstances, anybody breaks rank, you'll bring down the whole industry. And so all the universities, all the media, and all the government agencies have to say it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine, getting on an airplane, sleeping next to somebody, and climbing a mountain for infinity. Because the minute they change their song, then you can use that now to bludgeon the rest of them. You can get one of them to come out and say no. And we've done that. We already see that in the Independence today, or yesterday, they're talking about how Fukushima or Chernobyl forest releases will cause more cancer in that area. That's a crack in the armor we're seeing.
Right.
It really is, yeah.
But nothing new. We used to get inside information from people who worked there, who lived near there, who would visit there, etc. Nothing. We're not getting anything, Dana. Nothing. And they're talking about the softball Olympics event in Fukushima itself, I guess, the city.
they're vicious, eh? They're totally maniacal. They're vicious in how they treat people down there. It's a society of abuse, and that the workers will abuse themselves. Like, say they're getting paid for 8 hours, they'll work 16 hours so the boss can have all the extra stuff. And it's a really strange society, and they've been at this for so long. Once they got captured, that was the end of the society. They put all the Yakuzas and everybody else in charge. They brought in democracy. So once democracy shows up, your normal country is destroyed, and now you have to go into this corporate personhood routine. And corporate personhood is not supposed to exist under any constitution, Bill of Rights, or Magna Cartas. And corporate personhood was an amendment added to the slavery law, which was meant to free the blacks from an oppressive government, and is being used by corporations to have a lot of those human rights piggybacking off that one. But it's an illegal amendment to the Constitution. And Justice Hugo Blackhead wrote an eloquent dissent in 1939 how absurd it was that amendment meant to free people from an oppressive government was used to oppress the sovereign people by corporations. And like, if you challenged them in court, it wouldn't stand up. And we do scattered time see posturing where they want to go challenge corporate personhood. This is where corporations have certain human rights, so certain facets and certain minutiae of the human rights codes. And therefore, like, OSHA went to surprise inspect an abusive animal plant, and they successfully sued the OSHA because they had the human rights, and those human rights were violated. But here they were abusing the animals, but they weren't allowed to surprise inspect them, which is how you catch them. But in Canada, you can surprise inspect these corporations in certain aspects.
Right.
And that's why nuclear is getting away with everything.
Well, they
have
are. You notice that Trump is calling for a rebirth and a re-strengthening of the nuclear industry.
Yeah.
He just did that 2 days ago.
We got to get rid of corporate personhood, and then we get rid of all of the troublemakers, because that's where it stems from.
I agree.
I'm sure everybody.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. You be well. Okay. All right. That's our update on Fukushima, and all I can do is tell you, every time you see a story about it, remember it, because there are not many, and it's happening all the time. Nothing's changing. It's getting worse. That's the latest. Okay. Have a nice day tomorrow. Every day is special, and for many of you around the world, tomorrow is right now. So enjoy, and we will be back on Wednesday. We have a great encore for you tomorrow night, so we'll talk soon.